folks, Steve Vai here, and I'm at the Music Zoo in Roslyn, Long Island, my old stomping grounds. The duck pond was right out there. Show them the duck pond. Okay. You don't want to know what used to go on there when I was a teenager. It's great to be back. Well, welcome to an Alien Guitar Secrets Masterclass. And if it's too loud, too bad.
Thank you. Feels good. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to bring my buddy up, Andy Aledort.
Steve Vai, ladies and gentlemen, come on, man.
Thank you. Does it sound okay? Can you hear? It's a pretty live room. I can't really hear a note I'm playing up here, but that's not unlike half of the clubs that I play in sometimes. Can we just a little more vocal? And can you? It needs about 3 dB at 10K, a couple of dB at 5K, or 4. That's much better, yeah. All right. Give me a little 50 cycles just for the sex of it all. Great, thank you. It's really nice to be here on Long Island. I came into town to do something in New York City. And actually, I was in Chicago first. My nephew was getting married, and I officiated the wedding because I'm a minister. That's right. And it's funny because sometimes I go up to people on the street, couples, and I marry them, and I just tell them, now deal with it. But it was nice to come here. It was Tommy from the Music Zoo has been so kind to try to invite me here in the past, but finally I was able to work it out to come. So thank you so much for coming. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to do, usually I travel around the world quite a bit and I do these Alien Guitar Secrets masterclasses where I just talk a lot and do some demonstration, play some backing tracks, my cheap band right here. And then at the end, we do this wonderful thing where I invite people to come up and jam, which is very nice, and I'll pick some people towards the end. And, sorry. And, but then we're going to do something a little different this time. We have Andy, and it's more of like an open kind of a situation where he's going to ask questions. And then we'll open the floor for anybody that might be interested in asking questions. And any question, no questions are off limits, sort of. You might not like the answer. But I'm very interested to do my best to answer questions that you might have about your career, things that are pertinent to you and valuable to you as an artist, guitar player. Like I say, I can answer any questions about anything that you can find out about me on the internet, but it's much nicer to hear some stuff that's very interesting to you in your career. So with that, I'll hand it to Andy.
All right. I'm really happy to be here with you, Steve. I met Steve, maybe you may have still been 19 years old. I'm not sure if it was 79 or 1980. But I actually have to tell a little bit of history. I have to do it. So I read a Frank Zappa interview in Guitar Player magazine. And he said, I think the question was, well, are there any guitar players, you know, that are new guys coming up? And he goes, well, there's this guy, Steve Vai, that I think people are going to hear about. And I had been in contact with Frank's manager just for different things at the time. And, and he explained how you had sent the transcription and performance of the Black Page.
Yeah.
So I think I wrote, can I get a copy of that? And I still have a copy that they sent me, whatever year that was. So it was 78 or 9 in your handwriting, and it was just like a stencil. And somehow, I don't really know how.
You mean of the Black Page?
Yes, of your transcription.
Of my transcription? Yes. You have a copy?
I have a copy
Jeez,
on
I
the
don't
original.
even have a copy anymore.
I should have brought it with me. And I ended up writing a letter back to them to thank them, and I think I said, can you just say hi to Steve or something? I don't know. We ended up writing 1 or 2 letters back and forth, which was really fun, but it's just funny.
A lot of people here don't know what letters are.
I know.
It's all email.
You know, you'd sit down and you write on a thing that's called a piece of paper they make from trees. I don't even know if they do that anymore. And then you have to wait for the person to get it, and then you get a response. But anyway, so but it's a lasting thing because I still have it. I still have that letter from Steve. And I had sent Steve a recording of me playing San Bernardino and Spanish Castle Magic, and your letter back, you said, Jimi Hendrix and Frank are my 2 favorites. So
Yeah, that's great.
anyhow, so
And you've been a great supporter through the years and a friend and amazing guitar player in his own right here, man. It was wonderful. You have to hear
I'm
him play
trying one of
sometime,
these days. Thank you. Thank you. From you, Steve, that means a lot. You know, I always think of maybe you know this, there was a very famous classical cellist named Pablo Casals, one of the greatest cellists that ever lived. And when he was 90, he was still practicing for 6 to 7 hours a day. So someone asked him, you know, you're 90 years old, you have this incredible career, you're one of the most famous, you know, musicians that's ever lived. Why are you still practicing for 6 hours a day? And he goes, because I'm beginning to see signs of improvement.
I'm beginning to see signs of, ah!
What was he going to say?
Yeah. Well, you know, that's the kind of thing where the moment I saw a guitar for the first time, I immediately, there was a love affair that started. I was about 7 years old, and there was a kid in my school that was 9 years old, and he had a guitar. And you know, when you're 6, somebody that's 9 is like a god. And he had a guitar, and I immediately felt an attraction there. And when I started playing, I knew that I would never stop. I mean, you know, given all practical life situations, but because it's an infinite instrument of expression. You know,
Did you feel? So you saw this person play, and you thought, "I want to play the guitar." Is that was that?
Well,
because that was what I was going to ask you. If there was a moment, you know, that you could point to where you said, you know, something about that guitar, that's for me.
Yeah, there was 2 moments. One was that when I actually saw what a guitar was, and it just looked so cool. It sounded great. I mean, it was hanging off of the body. You go like this, and it goes clang, clang. And I just said, yeah, man, that's for me. But I was too insecure to play one, because where I came from, if you played a guitar, either you thought you were cool or you were cool, and I wasn't neither. So, but then my sister came home with Led Zeppelin, and that was it. I heard, you know, Heartbreaker. I'm like, nah, I've got to play the guitar. And I had a friend that had a guitar at his house, and he sold it to me for $5, and that was it.
So, did you get a teacher? Did you sit there, you know, just on your own?
Well, I didn't know how to.
Those, you know, trying to pick up licks, or did you have other kids that you could play with? You know,
Well,
the practical thing of like,
Yeah.
well, now I'm into this thing. I want to progress.
Well, I kept it a secret because I was too embarrassed. It was odd, and I loved composition. I already knew how to write music.
So how did that happen?
When I was younger, you know, my parents were playing the music of West Side Story, and that really had a big impact on me because I understood composition. You know, that if I was to say that I had a natural talent, it's music. I just understand it. I don't know why. I didn't realize I understood it until later. I thought everybody just kind of understood the concept of written music and composition. And then it was later when I realized that usually just musicians, people that, you know. But the guitar was not natural. I'm not a naturally gifted kind of a player. I had to work really, really hard. No, I'm serious. And I know this because I've had many students who were tremendously naturally gifted. And because I would give them lessons in, like Dweezil, for instance. Dweezil, the first time I gave him his first lesson, I was afraid to tell Frank his son was never going to play the guitar. You know, he'd go to hit one note and he hit 3 strings. And I'm like, no. In 1 week, this kid was just connecting. And then I would bring him like a Van Halen record, and then he would be, you know, and then an Yngwie record. And he was playing it. And I've had so many students who were very naturally gifted, and I wasn't. I really had to work very, very... Anybody in this room put in the hours that I put in on this thing, you'd have as much, if not more, technique, honestly. But the one thing I noticed as time went on, it's not really how much technique you have. It's what you choose to play, you know? And I have this weird kind of quirky side to me that I loved exploring. You know, that was it. For me, when I was a kid, the most important thing, and to this day, it's the same thing. And this is something I always try to pass on to people. The most exciting thing to me back then is the most exciting thing to me now. And what that is a good idea. When I get an inspired idea, I've always loved sitting and not being able to play something and then working on it, and all of a sudden you can do it. It gives you a sense of achievement, a sense of dignity, and it's like every day is Christmas. But I never had any expectations for the future. I never felt, I have to do this so I can be famous. It was so off my radar. So as a result, and this is, hopefully you find the inspiration in what I'm saying, to find the thing in you about music. If you're a musician, how many people here are actually guitar players, musicians? And great. But this holds true for any field that you're in, really. You have to find what's exciting to you, you know, that without any excuses in your head why you can't do it, or fear of failure, or expecting somebody to do it for you. And that was the thing that I did that always worked, because as a result, I became fiercely attached to playing the instrument and just entertaining myself with finding something crazy. That was really the juice, you know? And as a result, you get on the radar of other people. It's like, I never asked Frank Zappa if it was to be in his band. That would have been ridiculous, you know? But because of my attraction to the thing that was so interesting to me about the guitar, I came on his radar. And same thing with every single gig. It all just kind of came. It was a consequence. And that's one of the things I notice in so many young musicians, is this pressure that they put on themselves about having to be successful, about having to, if I choose to be a musician, then that's what I have to do for the rest of my life, and I have to be wildly successful. That's a lot of pressure. You don't need it. Matter of fact, it's a deterrent. It cuts at the root of finding your note, so to speak. And everything kind of came to me, the Crossroads, they called me, Dave Roth called me, you know, and Whitesnake 3 times, you know. And it's been really good that way. And to this day, the same thing holds true. Yeah.
So that was going to be one of my questions, is has the nature of inspiration itself changed for you over time? And I'm sure that it has in some ways, but it sounds like what you're saying is, in a broader way, it really hasn't changed. It sounds like the instrument and music itself, because you're also a composer and you have talked about one thing that Steve has talked about that I think is fascinating is he'll say, well, I have all the music for my new album in my head.
Yeah.
So he's already embarked on the creative trip of hearing this music, putting the music together, envisioning it, and then it becomes, it blows up to now you have an album. You have an album in your mind, which is amazing. You know, it's kind of an incredible thing to think of. But, so two things. Number one, what it says is if you don't get in your own way, that can happen. You just keep following that creative sense and say, here's this, here's that, and oh wow, I'm seeing a picture. I'm just going to follow that picture. But what it reminded me of is there's a very famous quote from Alfred Hitchcock, the famous director, and he said that every movie he ever made, and if you think of, Psycho, for example, he said a very similar thing, that the whole movie would come to him in his mind without a storyboard, but then he had to make the movie.
Then you had to do it.
So he would always say, well, it's no fun for me. I already got, I already know what the movie's going to be like.
Yeah.
I had my moment of thrill, and now as the work comes in. Mm-hmm. So that is, of course, so important to find the way to bring your creativity that you've experienced inside and in your mind into the world so you could share it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm hearing from you, and we all know that. The real world comes in, and it can really get in the way in a lot of different ways, and I think every artist has to figure out, well, how to navigate that so you can still...
Well, the real world doesn't come in. You create obstacles in your head. Okay. And it looks like the real world. That's true. And unless you're doing it and you notice it, it's hard to understand even what I said. But I notice it in myself, and I notice it in others. And that's why I can say something like that. So finding inspiration can happen in many different ways. And a lot of people feel, well, how do you become inspired? Do you do it this way? Is this the formula? Is this the steps you have to take? And I know this isn't a very pleasing answer, but every way that you can find inspiration is valid. There's no set formula. And I'll just name a few ways. And everybody in here finds inspiration all the time. You can't live without being inspired, you know. Everything you do on one level is a creative process. Even if you're going to get up and walk to that door, there's a desire in it and a creative action, you know. And being creative in the arts or music or business, or cooking, or conversation, or humor, it's the same. You have to, there's this place you have to go to, and it's very elusive, and you have to just create an opening for it to just kind of come through you. So, in looking for inspiration, there's conventional ways that a lot of people do it, and one way is you listen to the music that you love from other artists. I get inspired that way quite often. You know, I'll listen to something and I'll go, oh, man, that's got a great energy in it. And I absorb the energy of the track, and then I create from there. Or I'll actually hear a riff, and I'll think, that's a cool riff. I'd like to do something like that. But I don't necessarily plagiarize it unless I'm doing that and I don't realize it, which has happened a few times. You know, when I released Passion and Warfare, my first interview, the guy says, oh, I see you pulled Blue Wind from Jeff Beck, and I would love to. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, da 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 da, and I went, oh, I stole it from Jeff Beck. So sometimes things like that happen, and if you're lucky, you'll get to sue Coldplay one day. Hey, listen, I was in a band with a guy whose music you know very well, who used to say we used to sit around and play AC/DC songs and change a couple of the songs, chords, and, you know, you'd never know it. So that's one way, and there's so many ways to be inspired. It's all based on your radar, what you're open to. Something that somebody says can be an inspiration for a song. Something that you see somebody do. Something that you hear. Something that you just pick up your instrument and start playing. Much of my stuff came that way. Something that you create a unique opening in yourself. And this is so amazing, really. If you stick with enjoying being creative, it gets deeper and deeper. And you can have these paradigm shifts in your creative life. And what a paradigm shift looks like is, I'm not so concerned with anything that anybody else is doing. I'm not even so concerned with what I was doing. I want to know what I'm capable of doing that I don't even know I can do yet. And that's just a mindset, and you can have that mindset because you are everybody is absolutely capable of being uniquely creative in ways that they're not even aware that they can do. But you just have to believe that, and I believe that. I believe it about you, I believe it about me, but then you need to apply it. But how do you apply that? First, really, you just have to know that it's true, that you are capable of being uniquely creative in ways that are completely off of your radar right now. Okay? So I'm here to tell you that. And you can take it from me because it's a fact. That's what we're here for, I believe, to be creative for the enjoyment of it. That's how, okay, I'll get a little esoteric because, hey, you know me. I have that tendency. But it's just so obvious when you look at it that, as they say, the universe is expanding, right? It's very obvious, and we came from the universe. Sometimes we look at it and it looks like there's me and then there's the world out there. But really, that's an upside-down way of looking at it. We came from it, and everything we do expands the universe in some way. The guy that made this microphone, you know, every note you play, the universe is now more. It's true. What a great design. Whoever's in charge made you so you can be creative to expand the universe. And when you can answer, you know this because when you are being creative, well, okay, I'll say the foundation of the universe is freedom, the action of the universe is expansion, and the reason is joy. Okay, this is just my philosophy, but this is what I enjoy believing. Right. And whatever you believe is your reality. So you know that because you are the universe, because there's nothing that feels better to you than the feeling of freedom, right? When you're free to think whatever you want to think, free from hang-ups, free from fear. That's a big one, you know. And the other thing that always feels good to you is when you're creating. When you could be making breakfast if you love to cook, whatever it is. Everybody does something that when you're doing it, you're really enjoying it. It feels natural to you. It's flowing. There's this free-flowingness to it. And that's the best way to write music, when it's flowing freely, because you have this feeling of freedom, openness. And when you do this, and you're enjoying it, there's just joy, right? You really enjoy doing it. And that's what I focus on. So finding inspiration, one of my favorite ways, is to just kind of create this blank space in your head and allow melodies and stuff. I do this every night. I highly recommend you try this. Tonight when you go to bed, when you're done doing whatever you do before you go to bed, try relaxing and kind of listening in your own head for melodies, for rhythms, for harmonic textures. Every night I write a symphony in my head. I do. It's amazing, and you just sit there. And then sometimes I'll talk it into my iPhone. Sometimes it sounds like crap, it's gibberish, especially if I was high. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
We weren't going to go there, Steve.
No, I'm not going to go there. But if you...
Can you play that one, with the one where you're really high?
You want to hear the last one I did? Okay.
He wasn't high. That was a joke.
No, that was a joke. I have thousands and thousands of little snippets, and really, this is how I love to write music. I have this, what I call the infinity shelf. I started when I was 13, and I was playing the accordion, like all good Italian boys from Long Island, right? Had an accordion, a Rivederci Roma. I used to play Inagata Davida. So
you were hip, man.
That was it. So I've always tried to capture something when it felt like an inspiration. And I've got so many. Let me see. I don't even know what this is. I have no idea what this is, but... Oh, I remember. You'll never, it probably sounds like gibberish to you. But I captured something that was exciting to me. And that's all you need. The whole song is finished. I just needed that. And sometimes I'll tell a little story or something. Right. So this is inspiration. Don't underestimate the power of your own inspiration. Be friendly with it. Because
that's exact. I don't mean to interrupt you, but the feeling I'm getting from what Steve is saying is that, and this is, you could, like you said, you could apply it to every aspect of your life, but it's definitely true in the arts. You have to be the biggest supporter of yourself. We all succumb to fear, and nobody wants to be criticized. I did a clinic out in Seattle about 5 years ago, and it was for kids from 2nd to 5th grade, and they wanted me to do a guitar clinic about Jimi Hendrix because it was in Seattle, and the kids were learning about Jimi Hendrix, and the kids were like 7 to 10, 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And they actually had a book in their curriculum called Jimmy Sounds Like a Rainbow. That was the name of the book. And so the challenge for me was to do a guitar clinic for 7 to 10-year-olds,
That is a challenge.
I just thought about what is the first thing, why am I such a Jimi Hendrix fan? How does Jimmy hit me in the most, what is the most basic way that he hits me that it doesn't matter? I love it, and it's the most validating thing in the world about every single thing about life. You listen to it and you go, well, life is perfect, and I'm so lucky to be here because listen to this sound, this place, this thing, art, music, and Jimmy, and his whole thing. When you really are immersed in that feeling, the world does seem like a perfect place, and maybe it in fact is a perfect place within art. Anyway, so what I said to the kids was, first thing I did is I put on, we turned the lights down, and I put on Jimmy from Monterey Pop, the intro, him playing like a Rolling Stone. It's one of the most iconic things ever. His headband is crooked. He's got his canary yellow pants on. The band isn't playing, it's just him. He hits the guitar, and he makes a face, and there's this pause, and there's just so much power in every aspect of it. And then the band comes in, and it's just like this explosion.
Explodes into a rainbow.
And then he starts laughing, and he's smiling. And then we watch it. I get chills thinking about it. And then it's and then we fade it out. And what I said to the kids was, I said, okay, so here's a guy who wants to express himself, and he is going to get everything out of this. He's going to do it for himself, for his own love and joy, and everything he wants to express himself, and he feels so great doing it. So in talking to the kids, I said, you know, whether you like to play guitar, paint pictures, you know, whatever it might be, you can't allow yourself to not do it because you're thinking that you're going to be criticized.
Well, that's the biggest, probably the loudest voice in the head.
But I said, why? Don't think that that person knows more than you do. Why would they? Why is their opinion more important than yours? You know, to a 7-year-old. Don't assume that it is. Says who? Maybe your opinion is more important. But the point is, you know, if you can get in that place where you're being creative, and that world of creativity is a wonderful place that makes you feel great. Well, so you know, we're all guitar players, and I think it's a big part of what, if you really love the instrument and love music, the way it hits me, and then I'm going to ask you, Steve, if you know, how you feel about this. Every time you plug in the guitar, whether you're by yourself or you're on stage in front of thousands of people, the opportunity is there for something to happen that has never happened before. So just that by itself should be enough reason to really go for it, right? To want to realize that.
Well, I think that is a good reason. And the reasons vary sometimes, and they change through the years. And the reasons why somebody wants to play guitars might be very different. I just thought it was the coolest instrument in the world. You know, when I saw a guitar, I just loved it. I loved the way it felt. I loved the way it sounded. I knew it was an instrument of infinite expression. And sometimes gigs are hard. Yeah. Sometimes, for some reason, my fingers, and it's very easy to get caught in your head. This has been my lifelong struggle, not a struggle, but my lifelong identification, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is the voice in your head as you're playing, even before you play. What are you going to play? What happens if you break a string? What are people going to think of you? What if you fuck up? You know, oop, I saw some children, and sorry. What if you make boo-boos? You know, so you can create this fearful fantasy future that doesn't even really exist, you know? Like, the way you feel, because a lot of people come up to me and they go, well, I'm so nervous before I go on stage. I'm so nervous when I have to play with somebody, or I'm so overwhelmed with the idea of what I have to do to make a record or present myself to the world, or whatever, you know. These are all just thoughts in the head, but they create a feeling in you, right? Feelings of insecurity, feelings of overwhelmment, feelings of not good enough. So, and I know this, everybody feels these things, you know? And the interesting thing is the way you feel is based on the quality of the thought in your head. No exception. No exception. The way you feel emotionally, joy, sadness, you know, whatever it is, anger, frustration, being annoyed, it's based on the thought in your head. Your body doesn't just go into a feeling of anger, you know? So the most important thing about playing an instrument and about living life is how you feel. That's number one. If I was to do my best to give you my experiences when I look back after a 37-year career, And I hope one day I can tell you after a 50-year career or a 60-year career, and maybe it's everything I would say is different, but it's the way you feel that's the most important thing, and the way you feel is telling you what you're thinking. So if you're angry at somebody, if you have the courage to look at your own thoughts, you'll notice that they're very angry thoughts, right? So how do you find that true, deep, fulfilling enjoyment, which is what you were saying in playing an instrument, without fear, without any concern? Imagine what that would feel like. And maybe some of you feel it. Maybe some of you are doing it. You're playing an instrument and really digging it. Really, because, I mean, playing an instrument it's a gift from God, you know, it's a birthright. Everybody should do it. Whether you're banging on a drum or, I mean, making a melody, it's a phenomenon when you think of it. When you really look at it, we're these weird creatures, and we got hair, and we got all this, and we're making music, and it sounds like this, you know? Well, that's kind of the way I think. I go out there. But wouldn't you want to just feel ultra-free? I actually call it the ultra zone, and I can get to it lately more and more when I'm touring or I'm on stage. And when I'm in the ultra zone, so to speak, there's no concern about what's going on around me. I have no concern. I'm not worried what it sounds like. It sounds like what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. I'm not worried about breaking a string, because you know what? You break a string, too bad. You know, the amp goes out, it happens, you know. When you think about these, what are the people thinking in the audience? You're going to create in your own mind what they're thinking. Yeah. And then you're going to react to it. It's really kind of crazy the way we do this, right? So I've noticed this in myself through the years. What goes through my head when I'm playing? Now, like I had to work so hard on playing the guitar, where some people were very natural, I had to work really hard, and still do, on controlling my attention. Because it's really tricky up there. When the lights come down, all bets are off. You could practice in your room till you're blue in the face for many years. You can rehearse in the garage forever and really get it tight with your band. You're excited. You got all the parts down. You're going to go out there, you're going to blow up the bridge. And those lights go out and you're standing on that stage. For many people, it can be a completely different world. Okay? And it's almost like a deer in the headlights. You're like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. Whoa. And everything goes to hell, you know? And I know, you know, that's happened to me at different periods. So that ultra zone is when you're playing and everything is flowing. You're connected with the instrument. Your attention is on every note. That's where the joy is, okay? Your joy is when your attention, your full attention, right, is in the melody that's coming through you instantly, and the tips of your fingers. It's hard to explain, but there is one thing that I can offer that you can try that I think would be extremely powerful for you as a performer, as a musician, as a guitar player, as anything. And this is something that I practice and I still practice, especially on stage. It's relaxing. Relaxing the body, relaxing and breathing. You'd be surprised how well your fingers will perform when you relax and breathe. You'd be surprised to notice how uptight you are the moment you start to relax and breathe. And this is something that I'm so excited about my next tour, which isn't going to be for about another year and a half, because I'm just getting it deeper and deeper. When you relax, your fingers know what to do. They already know what to do. It's hard to explain, but they move better. You hear better. There's no, the only thing that's causing stress is the thoughts in your head that you're creating, usually about a fearful future that's a fantasy. And it sounds like, what do they think of me? What are they going to think? What is the press going to say now? You can make up all sorts of things. But when you put your attention in your body, and when you see me perform, that's all I'm doing. My entire attention is in relaxing my body. And these miraculous things, at least for me, start to happen. The way you move, the way it flows, the way the notes love it when you're relaxed, you know? And this is a practice. It's an intense practice. Most people think they have to think about the scale, the key, and of course those things have their place, but your connection with the instrument, which is directly reflected in your connection with the audience, is based on how well you can relax. And when you're thinking about relaxing, there's no space for fearful fantasy future thoughts. So try that. Even when if you have a gig and all of a sudden there's that fear, nervousness, for some people. Just try relaxing and breathing. It's like a meditation.
Well, and it also seems that it's a discipline that you have practiced in, like you were saying before, and the discipline, and correct me if I'm wrong. I try to do this, and I feel that for me it hasn't been that hard to do. For example, some people are prone to getting nervous every time they go out and play. I've been playing with Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers for 12 years, and Dickie says he gets very intense butterflies before every single show, and he still does. And he accepts the fact that that's just him. He doesn't like it. He hates it. But that's him. For some reason, I rarely get nervous. And so one of the greatest experiences for me, and I'm bringing this up only because I feel like it's a good example of what Steve's talking about. I was invited to play in Japan for the Mount Fuji Rock Festival about 14 years ago. I just got a phone call. Do you want to go to the Mount Fuji Rock Festival in Japan and play with Mitch Mitchell, Jimi Hendrix's drummer, and Billy Cox? So I said, yeah, I do. And they said, all right, well, just go to Japan, and when you see Mitch and Billy, you guys will figure out what you're going to play. And it was like, the bill was, Smashing Pumpkins and Lou Reed and the Chemical Brothers. Like there were all these real bands that were real big that sold a lot of records. And then us, hey guys, what do you want to play? And so I walk out, and there's 200,000 people. And so people had asked me, weren't you nervous? And I said, no, because it was like, this is the greatest thing. Like being immersed in that, and then there's Mitch Mitchell, Jimi Hendrix's drummer. I feel it was a good thing that I didn't get nervous, because I could easily imagine being nervous in that situation. But for whatever reason, it was the opposite. I thought, like you dream of stuff like this. This is phenomenal. I couldn't have been happier.
Yeah, and some people, that's their natural state. They're not nervous. I've gone through various stages. In the beginning, well, with Frank, I was nervous because the music was death-defying. I had to know 80 songs, and every night he picked a completely different set list, and they were just terrifying pieces of music. So I was in a state...
But you also insisted on approaching the music in such a way that by the second record, the credit on the record said, Steve Vai, impossible guitar parts.
Well, that was Frank. He did that. Well, it was, for me, with the Zappa stuff, it was very easy in that I always felt that no matter what you give me, no matter what Frank gave me, if I just started really slow and figured out the best fingering and did every note perfect, and then slowly got faster, how could you not do it? How could anybody not do it?
But that discipline is a tremendous thing in and of itself, to actually find it in yourself. We all know this as players. You say, well, I need to have a good discipline as a player. To be able to roll all of that back to what really needs to be the starting place.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to know. Where should I really be starting so that my next step and my next step are getting me further down this path instead of I'm stuck.
Well, one place to start is with a visualization of the final product. Was the way I approached the Zappa stuff. I have no discipline. I can't do anything that I don't want to do. I never could. People say, you were so disciplined, you used to practice 12, 15 hours a day. But there was no discipline. The discipline was stopping, because passion is not discipline. There's different energy, even in the words. If I say the word discipline, I got to do this. I'm disciplined, But with passion, you can't stop, And what passion is the momentum of enthusiasm. So with something like the Zappa stuff, I would visualize myself play, and that's one other gift I feel I had, and I still use quite a bit. And this is an incredibly powerful gift that we all have, and it's the ability to visualize. That's how you manifest things. Everything that you've ever manifested in the world, whether it's a relationship, a new car, a joke, anything, it started out with a thought, right? Everything in this room started out in somebody as just a thought, right? And then the next step in the manifestation of it is in visualizing it. If you can visualize, and it's funny because when I was young, I would lay in bed and I'd put on the headphones and I'd listen to Led Zeppelin. I was 10 years old. Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, all that stuff. And I envisioned this guy that was playing the guitar for all of his friends, and I could fine-tune it. I saw the way I moved, and I would see myself as performing almost like effervescently, with this, almost like a wizard. Every movement was inspired and completely effortless and elegant, And you're allowed to think those things about yourself. It's your imagination, right? There's no rules. What I didn't realize I was doing was I was creating that person at that moment. Right. Because you become what you think about. And so that's how I'm still working on becoming that guy. It's always things you can work on. But when you find passion in something, there's no need for discipline. Because with the Zappa stuff, I would visualize myself playing, and I'd hear it. This is really important too. If you want to improve yourself, you have to hear yourself in your own mind's ear and mind's eye. You have to actually see yourself doing something that you're incapable of doing. Try it, and fine-tune the picture. And it could be anything that you want. And that's really the important thing that a lot of people miss, because they think it needs to be something that somebody else wants. Right. And that's an illusion. You'll never be comfortable. You'll never feel the delicious satisfaction of fulfillment in being creative in your own personal, unique way. If you're trying to please somebody else, it just doesn't work. So, how do you know what it is that you want to do that's unique and creative? What do you know? How do you know what your unique gift is? Well, that's keeping that open mind, the stillness. It comes in being still, with the thoughts in your head. Because the only thing that's obstructing your genius is the thoughts in your head that are telling you you have no genius. And that's just not true. And when you start feeling that unique visual. It's just a matter of pointing yourself in a direction that's different than the direction you were pointing yourself in. And then when you start feeling it, there is no need for discipline. It's like a freight train. Sometimes I get a vision, I could play you one little thing, and it might sound like hell, but it's finished in my head. And I just can't wait, It's painful sometimes, because most of them I'll never get to. So,
Well, Steve,
yeah.
so, a song that many of us know well, and maybe was, for many people, their introduction to Steve, was the Attitude song. And everything you're talking about has to do with attitude. So, this is a two-parter. Number one, why did you call it the Attitude song? Because the feeling of the song is exactly, to me anyway, all the things you're talking about. It's this hard-charging, super positive. There are these breaks in the song for these, here's this chance to do this thing. Like you built this song. If you guys know the song, I'm hoping most of you know the Attitude song. I mean, come on. It's the Attitude song.
Thank you.
So, da-na-na-na-na-na-na, space. And then what does he do? So, as a fan listening to it, well, one time there's this arm thing that's going creating this insane melody that's probably triple tracked. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
Whatever it is.
Well, anyway, we didn't work that out beforehand.
Yeah.
But so the two-part of the question is, why did you call it the Attitude song? And can you recall a moment where all the things you're talking about, of having this visualization of a feeling, where it was realized, it became realized for you early on, where you did sit back and go, wow, like that, there it is.
Yeah.
The fruits of my dream, it's actually there. There it is.
Well, we all do it. Whatever you visualize and then you go about manifesting or creating, the trick is in enjoying it in the moment. 'Cause that's really, that's all there is. The present moment of building it. And the quality of the way you feel when you're doing it flows into the project, flows into the music. So with the Attitude song, I just told you that, it's funny, I told him the story. Alice Cooper was looking for a guitar player. So I needed to write something really quick because the submission for tapes was the next day. And I highly recommend you try this. I just did it. It was stream of consciousness. I picked up a bass. I had a 4-track recorder. And I picked up a bass. Well, first I just put a drum machine on that went, and then I just improvised the bass part. One time through, I improvised the bass part. Maybe I punched a couple of notes. And then I just started building these guitars on top of it. And it was just total stream of consciousness. And I wasn't thinking, what are people going to think of this? Is it going to be accepted? Is this going to be a hit? How am I going to make money with this? There was nothing like that. It was just, how crazy can I be? Because all of those riffs I was visualizing at some point. Yeah. And then when I finished it, I was like, wow, that's pretty out there. One night, and it was called The Night Before, because I wrote it and recorded it. I recorded the demo. The night before, I had to submit it. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't name it the Attitude song. Oh. My friend walked in, Marty Schwartz, a very dear friend of mine, and he heard it and he goes, my God, you should name that song the Attitude song. It's got so much attitude. And I went, ding. So you see, inspiration can come from any place, even if somebody is giving it directly to you. So that's how, and it fit.
Marty knew. Marty
knew.
was right.
He was right.
So that's a good example. Now, and I feel like
I'm sorry,
should
Andy,
ask
I
you.
just want to don't lose your thought. But what I wanted you to try
Oh, I'm sorry.
was to create a piece of music in a complete stream of consciousness where you approach it like anything you do, there's no mistake in it. It's impossible to make a mistake. And you're not being criticized at all, especially in your own head. If you can get into the role of just being creative in the moment, just let it, it doesn't matter if it's good or even in tune enough or not, you know? Don't, and I was starting to say this before, don't second guess your own inspiration. Because there's no difference in any of us. The difference, I mean, as far as the capability of finding your brilliance, the difference is in those that allow it to come out and those that clog it up with their own thoughts in their head that they're not good enough. Or you'd be so shocked at how creative you really are when you just do it. You just do it. So experiment with that. Experiment with just doing it, and then you listen to it. Because the Attitude song, when it was done, it was okay. All the riffs were there, but it absolutely needed to be re-recorded properly. But I kept all the riffs. And if you can get into that groove, oh my God, there's so much freedom in it. It's really exhilarating. Look at Prince. I mean, that's how that guy's mode of operando was completely inspired. Frank, that I watched it firsthand every day, was a phenomenon. He was constantly inspired. Build it, did it, no, yes, no, yes, yes. And then he laughed. He was like a teenager, completely, you know. And that's a really delicious way to create.
So, another song that is closely associated with you, people know you for, and is a song that you have probably played at just about every one of your own performances for the past, was it close to 30 years, is The Love of God. So, correct me if I'm wrong, my feeling is the song means a lot to you.
Yeah,
and maybe you could tell a little story about the song, because it is, and again, from my perspective, it's a very powerful song. It's a beautiful song. The melody, I mean, this is the thing you're talking about to me, or what I'm hearing. The melody's perfect for the song, you know, and the story starts to get told. And so once you're in, you know. You've brought the listener in, and maybe as the creator of it, you've done that for yourself too, you know what I mean? Like you created this environment for yourself to then, so I don't know, you tell me.
Well, that came about very similar to, you know, all this other stuff. And I was in the studio recording, and I was walking out. This was, 35 years ago. And I felt something just said, pick up the acoustic guitar and turn on the cassette player, you know, and I did, and what came out was I just sang the melody, and I played, so right at that moment, the melody just tells you what it needs to be. You know, it's like low-hanging fruit. You just got to get out of the way of it. And I was you search, because your inner creative self knows what it should be. So and when you're in that frame of mind, you're being inspired. You're in the moment. It's flowing through you. The universe is expanding. and no. There it is. You know when it's wrong, and you know when it's right. Yeah, I mean, I heard it before I played it. See? I hear it. That's the only way it could be. At least that's what in there was saying. This is the only way P. So it was very simple. And I just had that much. And I put it on the shelf for decades, or 1 decade. And every time I walked past it, it would go, "Hey, I'm over here," you know.
Right, right.
And when I was working on Passion and Warfare, I had this concept of the 7th song being this huge ballad, and I found that piece. I knew it was there, but there were so many. You know, I had to kind of I have to choose which little snippet of
There's
inspiration.
a lot of little voices yelling at you from the...
Yeah, a lot. but yeah, the point is, I could have felt, you probably are, or could be, writing music that's just as nice, but you don't believe that it is, you know, in a weird way. You just kind of know when you're in the zone, and when you hear it back, when I heard it back, the whole song was there, the whole song, and that's all I had. So then I went like who was it you were referring to before that had the vision and then they have to build it?
Oh, well, Alfred Hitchcock.
Alfred Hitchcock, yeah. So the picture of the whole thing is there. Not his picture. Weep, weep, weep. Yeah.
Good evening.
And then I just started building it, and I just knew, okay, on this part I want this melody. That's right. And then I'm gonna build it, and I want it to go here, and there has to be something that's I've never played before, and certain riffs, that part came about, and it was so much joy doing it. I just loved it so much, and it's almost like it doesn't matter what anybody will think, because somebody came to me when they heard it in the beginning, and they said, that's kind of wanky guitar stuff, you know, and there was a thought that crossed my mind that said that I actually thought maybe I shouldn't put it on the record because it's too long, it's too much guitar. But that thought lasted that long because that other part was like, no, this is...
That wasn't Marty again, was it? 'Cause
No.
maybe Marty's not, you know.
I named that one. Matter of fact, I have it here if you'd like me to play it.
You should play it. But let me ask you this. So at what point,
Yeah.
I know I keep interrupting, did you feel, well, the love of God, that's the name of this song? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, this one, song titles can come about in many different ways, as you know. Sometimes you have the song title before you write the song, and you write the song based on the title. I've done that many times. I have this one song called Freak Show Excess. Yeah, and it was funny. That was somebody had reviewed one of my live shows, and they said it was a freak show excess. And I thought, that was a good name for a song. And what would a song sound like if it was called Freak Show Excess from Steve Vai or from my head, you know? So
it would sound like a Bulgarian wedding band.
there you go. You remember that?
I can't remember the guy's name. No, I wish I could.
Ivo Papasov.
It was Ivo. I was
It
going to
Ivo
say
Papasov and his Bulgarian wedding band. For the Love of God, I listened to it, and you know, there's some of my music I really, really like. You know, I love listening. I don't think it's superior in any way. It's totally subjective, but there's some stuff I just love, and it's usually not the obvious suspects. But I love playing that song, and when I listened to it, there was something in the melody that had a lot of gratitude in it. It was a song about appreciation and gratitude, you know? And that title came, For the Love of God, and because I was so grateful, I just felt like, how did this come out? You know, how did this come through me? I have nothing to do with it. You know, in a weird way, you kind of feel, I have nothing to do with this. Get out of the way. Right. And it comes through. And I had no idea if it was good or not. I had no idea people would respond the way they did.
It's good.
Thank you. Well, I sure like it, and I'll play it for you. Okay, I'm not one for making excuses. Well, maybe I am. I haven't played it in quite a while. So I'll give it a shot. If I don't know it by now, I'm an idiot. Every now and then, by the end of the show, it's like a Jimmy Page. Thank you. No, I didn't forget it, thank God. For the
right,
love of God, I better not.
Come on. I mean, seriously. Come on. Like, seriously. If there's one thing I could say, we didn't hear that before this guy came along, and and we all went, Steve Vai, that's what that sounds like. Steve Vai sounds like that.
And when I have my amps, I sound really like Steve Vai.
Well, you're Vai-like.
I'm Vai-like.
Vai-like. Well, that song is a perfect example of you having found or created, or whatever the right word is, your language, a distinct language, a distinct voice to communicate your music and your feelings. There's so many things you do, Steve, that, like from the beginning, once you heard it, I mean, you could say this about, this to me is, the true greats, you would say this about. You hear Hendrix once and you go, oh, there's that thing, like that's Hendrix's thing. Or John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu Orchestra, and you go, well, I never, now there's this new thing that wasn't there before, but it's so clear what it is. That's what it is with you, Steve. There's so many things that you do that are so you, so distinct, and it was like that really early on, So I don't know if you can say anything about your own awareness to finding and discovering your voice, or going. It's like looking in the mirror and saying, well, maybe that isn't so horrible. What's reflecting back at me. So maybe what is it that you could say about your own awareness to the development and recognition of your voice? What's distinct about you? Because there's so much.
Thank you, Andy. You're very good to me. When I look back, because I've been asked that question, and it's a tough one, I think the reason that I sound like I do is because I never felt good enough to sound like anybody else.
Thank God for that.
Well, let me explain that, actually, because I think there's some truth in it. And some wisdom, maybe, because when I was young, I obviously loved all sorts of genres of music. I really liked the blues. I liked jazz. I studied jazz. I liked classical. I liked fusion. I didn't like country. I'm kidding. I never quite got it. I get it now. But so I would listen to really great players in various genres, and I would just think, I can't do that. You listen to Hendrix or Jimmy Page for rock, or Al Di Meola. When I heard Al Di Meola, I thought...
Did you listen to, I have to ask you, did you listen to John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu Orchestra?
Because very much. That was... I have that stuff tattooed in my eyelids.
Because we had a mutual friend, and Greg Lamastro, and he had played me, I believe it was the tape that you had sent to Frank, and it had some live stuff.
Yeah,
and you doing
from my band from
Presto
college.
Vivace, and there was all kinds of stuff on there. And so you were, I guess, 18 then? Something like that?
Yeah.
And actually, the McLaughlin elements were sort of there at that point. But a very short time later, they weren't there. And I think that you found another thing.
Of course, I learned riffs from my heroes like McLaughlin and Di Meola. Oddly enough, I had lunch with Al yesterday. I'm sorry, I dropped something. But I never could really see myself playing like somebody else who was authentically an authentic player that was playing really well in a particular genre, because for a couple of reasons. First, I just never thought I was actually good enough to sound like them. And a part of me just said, why? They're already doing it.
Right.
And when I was younger than that, when I started playing, that was my perspective. I would try to play all, I learned all the Hendrix I could, and all the Led Zeppelin, all my heroes, Queen, and everything. And but whenever I started to sound too much like something that was genre specific, it just, this alert went off that said, "Don't go there. Look for something that's more what you would do if you didn't try to sound like anybody." And it wasn't kind of a head trip, like where I was like, well, I'm not going to sound like these guys. Because I don't think there's anything, if you love Stevie Ray Vaughan, if somebody loves Stevie Ray Vaughan and they want to play like him, that's fine. There's no rules, You can enjoy that. I mean, Kenny Wayne Shepherd made a great career out of it. and he's, I've played with him. He does it really well, little differently, good enough to be a monster at it, and authentic enough, but it's very obviously comes from a particular player that he admired. I could never do that because also I was just more fascinated with the weird things I was coming up with. So whenever I would come up with a weird riff, I would just say, okay, that's it. That's something. And that I still do almost every day. Every night before I go to bed, for about an hour, I go into the studio and I put on a vamp and I'll just play and I look for something that's quirky, because that's one of my greatest strengths is my quirkiness. And if I find it, I just beat the shit out of it. I just play it until it's like, I'll just do it like a meditation, I'll just do it until it sounds like something I've never heard and I've never played. I'll give you an example. I'll do a little bit for you. This is a vamp that is from a song off of Modern Primitive. And I love just sitting and playing on these things. And I make a lot of mistakes sometimes because I'm looking for something that I haven't done. And sometimes I'll kind of like play something that may sound like somebody. No, actually, I don't do that. I can't. Of course, it's nice to be inspired by other players. And I do that. I'm very inspired by all the incredible guitar players I get to play with. But you can only identify your own unique characteristics by doing them, allowing them to come out. So this is a vamp from a song called "And We Are One." And I'll just play a little bit. And you can ask me some questions about maybe something I find. Maybe you could see me develop something. I'll take like one idea and I'll just kind of start developing it. Okay, so check it out. This is something I discovered just not too long ago, is if I play octaves and I stretch them with the bar, they stay in tune on the D and the B string. So I'll sit for, if you discover something like that and you sit for an hour and focus on nothing but that, it's impossible to not find something unique in yourself. So this is what I'll only do it for a minute or so, but. Also, it has to sound like music. It has to be musical. Anything I play, even if I'm screwing around, it has to sound like a sentence. It has to end so it's a statement. Everything, I can't help it now, it's just a habit, because I love melody. Melody is what we respond to. Melody is how you communicate. It's like If I was to sit here and talk to you all night like this in a monotone voice and just keep going on and on, I could express the secrets of the universe, but you wouldn't care because they wouldn't make any sense to you because you'd be really bored in no time at all, and then there you have it. Right? Some people play the guitar like that. You know? So it's so important to phrase and make it. There's so many ways that this is a great practice. One thing I used to practice, a technique that's really, it can totally completely transform the way you play, is you say a sentence in your head, and then you play it on the instrument, and you play it over and over. Somebody give me a sentence. That's too simple. Okay, I love Rosalind. Okay, well, no, let me say just anything. I'm going down to the music zoo. And I'll do it with the octaves. I'm going down to the music zoo. Going down to the music zoo. I'm going down to the music zoo.
All right, so you're going down to the music zoo. Big deal.
So if you do that enough, long enough, and you focus on it, stuff's going to come out that you've never done before. And I love doing that. And you can pick a phrase. I mean, we did something silly like I'm coming down to the music zoo. I love Tommy from the music zoo.
That sounded just like Tommy's wife.
That sounded just like Tommy's wife. Yeah, I'm crazy, yeah.
But that works because talking is a natural. The phrasing of talking is the human. It's the human experience, right?
Especially if you got a wah-wah. But that's the Eat 'em and Smile, you know, the
right.
Yankee Rose, where I was doing the talk.
Well, and you know, two examples, Jazz Discharge Party House, where you played everything Frank said, which Frank was talking purposely in this weird, crazy phrasing.
Yeah, it's called Sprechstein. It's like half talking, half singing. But if you notice, bum, 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 there's notes, bum, bum, in everything. Bum, 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 bum. And if you listen, they're melodies. And so I would transcribe. I could transcribe what I'm saying right now, record it, and I've done that.
Well, you know, because with so many things we could talk about, I do want to get this in there. I'm not sure what year it came out. Maybe it came out in '83, the Frank Zappa guitar book.
Yeah,
83 or 4.
It was just re-released.
Thank God.
Yeah.
So if you guys are familiar with the Frank Zappa guitar book, so I got this book because I was a big Frank Zappa fan, and Steve, luckily for the rest of us, was crazy enough to sit, I believe, in his kitchen, because there's a little picture of you with a tape machine. You know, when you were, it's in the book, a little picture of Steve killing himself to write down all of this stuff, including, like in the song Packard Goose, with Turn It Down on the talking, and it was all pitched.
Yeah, he used to cut the grass.
Yeah, oh, he used to cut the grass. And it's all pitched. And I looked at that, and the same year, 1983, somebody said to me, oh, there's this new guitar magazine, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, and they want transcriptions. And, you know, I always wanted the transcriptions that I wrote for myself and my students, whether it be Jimi Hendrix or, some difficult stuff like John McLaughlin or Joe Pass. Of course, I wanted it to be as accurate as it could be. But Steve's book came out and basically said to me, this is what you could achieve if you're really not screwing around. Like I thought Steve, with that book, set the bar for guitarist transcription. I mean, if it was here, it was now, like 6 galaxies from here. And so just by you doing that and me looking at that, I said, he's proven that you could do it. So, you have to shoot for the highest level of accuracy you possibly could have. And in my life, next thing I knew, I became music editor of the magazine. And after a couple of years, people said, those transcriptions are really accurate. So thank you, Steve, for setting
transcriber.
The book did set the tone for that,
Well, also I had great subject matter because Frank was a very visceral player, and he wasn't playing like 16th notes. Frank
but you also had, I think, because an incredible Frank Zappa song with one of the most beautiful guitar solos is the song Inca Roads from One Size Fits All. And it may have been one of your first interviews when people were with Steve as a new artist, and he somewhere in there he said that you transcribed the Inca Roads guitar solo while riding on a bus from memory. Is that incorrect?
I think it was an airplane.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's very
But
melodic.
still, it was
it's very melodic.
It's also really complicated and really long. So you must have...
Oh, I knew it so well. It was so beautiful. Da-da-bum. They're just intervals.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the tough part was doing Vinny's drums.
Oh, right.
Vinny Colaiuta's drum parts. I just really enjoyed the idea of written music. It looked like art to me, and I knew the very great value in developing your ears, because that's the pathway. Ouch. That's the pathway between your inspiration and your amplifier. It's how well you can hear notes, and it's easy to practice technically. You'll develop a certain amount of chops and a certain technique, but really developing your ears, and I worked really hard on it ever since I was at Berkeley, and I started way before that, figuring out songs from records. It's so important to be able to know your instrument, so you don't have to think. You don't have to think about the scale, the tonality. You just hear it, and you kind of, there's a connection. And I'll show you a couple of really great things, and Andy will help me with this. But one thing I highly recommend, it may require discipline, is you got to be able to sing what you play. You have to be able to hit a note, and you'd be surprised. Some people will go to hit a note, and they're, I see it, but eventually you got to zero it. It's got to resonate inside of you. And then you start hearing melodies and you let them come out. Or sing a harmony like a fifth. and then do like thirds. And so I used to do this all the time. But one great thing that Joe Satriani and I used to do all the time, because as many of you know, he was my teacher. And you had mentioned in the beginning, there was a guy that lived a few houses away from me when I was a kid, John Sergio, really good friend of mine. And he was taking lessons from Satch. John Sergio was one of my greatest musical inspirations because he turned me on to all the music of the 70s. Wow. That I was like Led Zeppelin and that's it. He said, no, there's Queen, there's Jethro Tull, and he was taking lessons from Joe. So I went to Joe, and I didn't even know how to really string the instrument when I went to Joe. I was 12. And he was my God, my mentor for like 3 years, and still is in many ways. And let me tell you, he was great back then. If I was 12, he was 15. But if you're 12, a 15-year-old is like a god. Especially if they can go, and that was Joe. And he was just always cool. But one of the things we used to do, and this is great practice, grab a guitar. We just sit back to back for like 6 hours in his backyard and just play. And he would play a chord. One guy would play a chord. You didn't know what the chord was going to be. And you had to listen to it. And then you had to play. And then you would play a chord. In tune, hopefully. And this was just such a great thing to do to develop your ears. So Andy, try just play a chord and let it ring out for about 10 seconds and pick at it a little bit, and then I'll just play something, and then I'll play a chord, and you do the same. We just go back and forth. Another great thing while I'm tuning that we used to do is somebody would play a chord, and the other guy had to tell a story about what that chord sounded like. That's really great stuff because you're forced into your imagination. And what are we here for, right? It deepens your melodies, and it takes you out of your normal, conditioned, mostly negative thought patterns. These are cool, aren't they? These new tuners that they got. Okay. Andy Aledort. So that's a great thing to try. And you can do this with yourself, too, just by like recording a chord and then go into another one. I used to do that all the time for like an hour. So you don't remember what the chords are. But it forces you to listen. And that's how you create your unique melodies. Maybe we could take some questions, because I think
Yeah.
How are we doing for time? Oh, we're already over. Okay, I'll tell you what. How, you guys doing all right? You hanging in there?
I do want to ask you one. I want to ask you one more question.
I might
So it'll
take an
be
hour to answer it.
No, I was going to say it's on you, man. You're going to have
All
to try to make this a short answer, and you're going to hate my guts when I ask you this question, because
Impossible.
Because this one is really, but it's too cool. I can't help it. So there is a song, as many of you may know. Steve recently put out a record called Modern Primitive, where he went back. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, it's really phenomenal. And these are tracks from, I believe, around the time of going back to Flexible, or between Flexible and Passion Warfare, correct?
Yeah.
And you also recorded with Tommy Mars, if you don't,
Yeah.
I'm not sure you remember. He was my college dorm mate. Tommy Mars in 1973. January of 73, I went to the University of Hartford. I was 16 years old.
Wow.
Scared out of my mind. Why am I in college? I'm too young. But in the next room was this guy named Tom Mariano, who was graduating the Hart School of Music. He was 22 years old, and he was the star of the school. And so he came up to me, like it was my first week, and he said, "You like Chick Corea?" And I said, "Is that food? What is that? I don't know what Chick Corea is." Sounds good. And I went in his room, and he put on an album called Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, and he had a Rhodes 88 in his room. Anyway, so Tommy Mars was somebody that I got to know, and who was a tremendously important person for me. He was like he was the guy that made me play guitar for 7 hours a day. I really went from like, I know a few chords.
I didn't know any of that. That's so cool.
No, Tommy was like it. And then I wondered whatever happened to Tom Mariano, because he was the greatest musician ever. Fast forward about 5 years, and there's a guy who lost a lot of weight and shaved his beard, and his name is Tommy Mars, playing with Frank Zappa. So I'm going to see him all the time, still wondering, man, I wonder what happened to Tom Mariano, because the guy was so great. I had no idea that it was Tommy. Same person, until 1981, before that show at the Ritz, which you recall, where Al Di Meola came out and played, which was my favorite Frank show ever. And Tommy had gained a little bit of weight back and grew his beard, and I walk in, and of course, I see Tommy Mars, because it's a Frank Zappa show, right? But then it hit me, I went, that's Tom Mariano, it's the same guy. But anyway, so he's in the classifieds. But there's a tune on there, I see the question was too long, called...
No.
There's a song on there called...
Pink and Blows Over.
No, the Upanishads.
Oh, okay.
Or it's just called Upanishads. So, this is why you hate me. In 3 minutes, the Upanishads and Santmat and Urantia and Akashic and this whole, and maybe, I don't know, did you get into the books like Power of Now and A New Earth and stuff? You did. Yes. Is that a yes?
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
A day doesn't go by where I don't read something from him or watch. Every night when I go to bed, I watch his videos.
Okay,
that's what I
So
watch,
the guy who hit me to that was Pat Martino, jazz guitar player.
Really?
Who was my guitar teacher in 1978 for 3 months. But he talked about the Upanishads. And so anyhow, this song that's on Modern Primitive, to me, as soon as I heard it, I felt like, this is so Steve, this is so representative of you, and the feeling that I get from you that I feel is just you. It's like you might as well be standing there. It's you. Thank you. So I told you you'd hate me. There's a direct correlation between the things you were talking about before about clearing your mind and allowing the power of love and life and positivity. And I'll let Steve explain it, but the Upanishads is a book, and Urantia is a book, and these books are about these very things.
Mm. Well, what's the question? No, I'm kidding. I got you.
So, are there any? No, I'm just kidding.
I got you. Well, I was always one of these guys that wanted to know what's going on, on a deeper level. Just what's life and, these kinds of things. And when you have those kinds of questions, you'll get answers if you start looking. So when I was about 20, I went through a pretty bad mental state. But it was good because it pushed me into a direction of trying to understand myself more, which is basically what all spiritual teachings are. The true spiritual, a true spiritual teaching points you to yourself, discovering who you are deeper. And there was this fantastic bookstore in Hollywood called the Bodhi Tree. And that's when I started. And you go through different phases. And in the early days, in the 80s, I found the Urantia book and all of these sort of metaphysical things I got into for a little while. Numerology, you could see that in like Flexible and some of the records. Symbolism, astrology, these kinds of New Age kind of subjects. And it was very helpful for me. And then I got more into Buddhism and starting to understand that. And the Upanishads is a book it's thousands and thousands of years old. I think they're 10,000 years old or something, Upanishads. And they're just as fresh today. And they point you to yourself. So this became a constant search until I found Eckhart Tolle. Because that was when, for me, the biggest shifts started to happen.
So so what he's referring to are the two books that I mentioned, The Power of Now and...
The Power of Now is an Eckhart Tolle book.
And A New Earth.
A New Earth. I would recommend reading A New Earth first. Okay. It's a little easier, but it's the same thing. Eckhart just points to the dimension of now, which is, that's all there is, and how to live life in your now. Now, this is very, it walks hand in hand. What I was saying before is when you're caught in the thoughts in your head about past and future, because usually we base our sense of identity on things that have happened to us in the past. This happened to me, so I am this. I have this, so I am this. I have this disease, so I'm this. Or this person did this to me, or this person should have done something that they didn't do, or I did something, or I should have done something. All of this is past regret. And if you notice, your attention is in the past, which really only exists in the mind of man as a thought. And that's no scientist, the greatest scientists in the world, could not dispute that time is an illusion. Matter of fact, they're all now agreeing it. Even Einstein said it, but it's too obvious to even try to prove. The only time is now. And the only place that the past actually exists is the thought in your head. And the future is the same. And usually we're projecting into the future fearful thoughts that we've created based on our past. It's really crazy, but we don't see it. But Eckhart points it out. And when you see it and you get it, it's transformative. It's a release. It's a release on so many levels because you start seeing the kinds of thoughts you're thinking. And you discover that most of the time you're just critical. You're always critical. If you can even see the thoughts in your head, they're usually criticizing something or somebody or yourself. And really, any criticism about anybody else is just a statement about yourself. These are the things that I started to see. And you say, you're out of your mind, Vi. What are you talking about? Criticisms about others or criticisms about myself. Sorry, it's not my rule. It's just what is. It's true. You don't see it, though. So once you start recognizing this voice in your head that just doesn't shut up and is constantly talking and projecting into the future, that's the first step to waking up. And I don't know if I answered the question.
Well, and one of your albums is called Alive in an Ultrazone.
Yeah.
And to me, that's, and you mentioned that earlier about, I believe you used that term. But Alive in the Ultrazone, I think, is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
clearing.
the ultrazone is the now. It's the state of presence. I call it the ultrazone but it's just the state of intense presence. And this, people know me as a musician, but this is what I practice every minute of the day, that I catch myself going into. And this only started some years ago. And I've spent thousands of hours in a closet meditating through the years, But it's the recognition of the thoughts in your head and the realization that the only time is now. And when your attention is in the now, you're living life. You're connected to life. Any great idea that you've ever had has only come to you when your attention was focused now. Any kind of quality in any relationship you're ever going to have with anybody is based on your ability to be present with them, meaning giving them your attention without criticizing. Criticism in the head, this person. When you start seeing how much you do it, it's frightening. It's frightening. It's almost like there was a period that I went through where it almost seemed like I could not escape the mental commentary in my head. And what I didn't realize was it was always there. I just didn't know it because my attention was completely in it. And this is the case with everybody. But the moment you start separating yourself, this is where peace is. It's the only place you're ever going to find the one true thing that everybody on the planet really, truly wants, which is just peace. It's fucking peace, And and I discovered that it's in there and it's in everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Unfortunately, maybe we don't have time for...
Do we? I don't know.
Do we have any questions? I'll try to make it quick. Yes, sir. I'm sorry?
Being a Gemini.
I never thought about that for a second, that I was a Gemini. I have no I'm sure that it exists. I'm sure that there's personality traits that are based on various alignment of celestial bodies. I have no doubt. What I have no doubt about is whatever you believe will be your reality. And but we're all doing it. So the only time being a Gemini ever really, I guess, had an effect on me where I thought about it was when I saw that movie, The Omen. So stupid. I was this kid, and I was born on June 6th, 1960, so 666. And on 6/6/66, I turned 6. But it was 2 o'clock.
Doesn't mean
anything.
anything.
It was 6 o'clock somewhere. So I was fine. I thought it was funny. And then when this movie came out, and I was young, I thought I was the Antichrist. I was like, oh, fuck, man. Oh, shit. I'm the devil. But I'm not. I don't think so. So I don't think so. Yeah. My favorite memory playing with Frank. It's impossible to say because anything that Frank did was interesting, funny, and amazing. Just the things he would say at any time. We used to just say stuff just to see what he would say. And boy, you better be prepared. You better be prepared to hear the truth. He was intuitive on a level that was frightening. And he didn't. It didn't matter what you said to Frank. He knew your intentions. That was the thing, and he didn't hold back. One time he was on this show. It's called the Joe Pine Show. Joe Pine was he was like a Howard Stern type of character, real wise guy. And he tried to call you out whenever you were on anything. And he had a wooden leg. So Frank goes in and he sits down. This is national TV, and the guy says. Frank had all the hair. He goes, with all that hair, that must make you a woman. And without missing a beat, Frank said, with that wooden leg, that must make you a table. Every day was like that. I'm sorry, how does... Well, there's a process that we go through. When we hear something that's inspiring, we understand it on an intellectual level, okay? And then, if you're lucky, you can actually embrace it on an experiential level. And that's how you live it. You live it when you really understand it. Like, for instance, if I was to say to you, there's nothing to fear. That's probably one of the most powerful statements you'll ever hear. But do you believe it? Now, intellectually, we can discuss this and say, well, I fear that this is going to happen. But things have been happening through your whole life. To fear something that you're afraid is going to happen is like, it may not happen, and then you're living it. Or if it does happen, you're living it twice, But in reality, the only thing that fear is just the ego's fear of death, okay? So if you can really align with the reality that there is nothing to fear, not even death, that's different than the intellectual understanding of it. Do you understand? Does it make sense, what I'm saying? So if I was to say, you need to listen to the melody in your head because it's unique to you and it's perfect for you. And it's there. You might intellectually first say, well, nah, he's crazy, he doesn't know. I don't hear music in my head. But then I could say, no, it's there, just sing any melody, So then intellectually you could start to understand, well, yeah, because I see this guy, he's making music, it's coming out like that, it's in his head and it's in there. But you're not really going to know it until you create that space inside of you and hear it. Okay, one more example. Time. I can say to you, there is no such thing as time. The only time there is the present moment. And this is eternity. Show me something in the past. You can't. Well, I have a picture of something I tell you. I'm looking at a picture in the present. Show me something in the future. You can't. It's impossible. So intellectually, you can say, yeah, there's only the present. I'm not living in the future. Well, I am, but it's the present, But there's a big difference between the intellectual understanding of that and actually being present with your attention in this moment. Big difference. One of them is intellectual, the other is experiential. So that's how you live those things. You bring them from in your head to actually feeling them. Yep. Check them out online because when you see what they do for this community and for Long Island, and it's phenomenal. And it's actually very easy to do small little things to contribute and help. Like this, like buying a raffle ticket And Lil's going to come up, and she has the raffle tickets that have been being sold for a while. And I'm going to pick a winner, and then we're going to jam a little bit. Lillian Vai. Use the microphone.
He is.
It's kind of stuck.
So Jeff runs. This is crazy, man. This is nutty. You get paid a lot. That's the only thing.
Yes, I do.
And people usually do this for you. Don't lie. Other people unwind things for him. I'm telling you. Anyway, Family and Children's Association. Go to it online, please, because you'll see what we do for Long Island and the families in Long Island that are struggling. I would like to have Jeff tell you a little bit more about it, maybe a couple of sentences, because Jeffrey is the one that runs the whole entire agency with, I don't know how many programs, I'm sorry, I don't know. 20 plus programs that benefit the families on Long Island. So just a couple words.
So maybe I could sing it and you could play along? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Oh my God. So look, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. As you heard, Family and Children's Association benefits from this evening. Last year, we served more than 20,000 families and young people right here in this community. Right now, as we speak, there are young people who are showing up at the door of our shelter for runaway and homeless kids in Wantaw. There are seniors who are getting help in their homes so that they can stay there. There are folks who are getting counseling for opioid and heroin dependency in Hicksville and Hempstead. The program that Lillian runs keeps kids out of the criminal justice system and gets them back on the path to success. All together, we function to make Long Island a healthier and better and safer place. You guys are a big part of that for participating tonight, so thanks very much. And of course, thanks to Steve Vai. Round of applause, please.
And thanks to the Music Zoo for putting on the whole event and supporting this. I love Tommy from the Music Zoo. All right, what do we got?
Here you go.
Don't shoot the messenger. All right. Oh, I don't have my glasses. Listen to us, Lil. Long way from terrorizing the neighborhood on bicycles. Okay, the number that I have here is 6047140. 6047140. Okay, now, is that you? Right on, rock on, brother. All right, let me see your card. 604. Congratulations. All right. As a matter of fact, you can come up and be one of our first jammers. All right. Oh, do we have the guitar? Okay. You wanna grab the guitar? That's like faux pas. We should have had the guitar up here already. Oh, there we go.
It might be upside down.
What?
It might be upside down for me.
Oh, wow, cool. All right. Yeah, right. They're gonna raffle off your guitar. Okay, let's you know what? Let's just check this out real quick so I can give the boys at Ibanez a little promotion. I'm not even sure how it goes because I never open guitar cases. Be surprised what a prima donna I actually am. Okay, well, while he's doing that, let's pick a couple of... There was somebody that came up to me before and said they wanted to play. It was a young guy that's part of the organization, actually. Yeah, come on up, brother. He plays acoustic guitar, but he's going to pick up the electric and play. So Andy, maybe you can actually help us usher some. I'll pick like 5 guys and stand off stage, hang out off stage for a moment. So this is what we'll do. I'll pick like 5 folks, and I have a vamp here that'll play, and you come up and play a little bit, and then we'll trade a little bit maybe, and then we'll play together, just maybe a minute or so, and then you'll know when you're done because I'll go like this. Okay. And then make your way, okay, cool. And then make your way off, and then the next guy come up. Okay, oh, what do we got here? Let me just see this. Okay. This is... And people think I wear glasses because I think I look cool with them. Well, I think I do. They think I have a fan because it blows my hair back and I look cool. I do. Okay, so this is an Ibanez RG series, of course, and it's actually a sister guitar from the Gem that Ibanez has been making for 30 years that I designed. And oddly enough, occasionally it's the second biggest selling guitar in the world, or it's the third. It's according to where you are and what month it is. Strats, Les Pauls, or Gems. And that's quite an honor, and this is a great guitar, so congratulations. Thanks, Ibanez. Okay, who wants to jam? You 2 guys. Get some youngsters up here. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. One more, maybe? Okay, all right. Okay, this is in G minor. G minor.
Give it up for Steve
Andy
Vai.
Aledort.
Come on.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming out. Right on.